I want to tell you about a fictional story of survival that feels so real it'll stick with you. It's a story about human spirit pushed to its absolute limit, a mystery that takes 9 long years to unravel. This is the incredible imagined journey of Flight NC 16002. So let's set the scene. The date is December 27th, 1948. The world is still settling down from the holidays, but for a group of travelers, an unimaginable ordeal is just about to begin. That question is the stuff of nightmares. But for the people on Flight NC 16002, it was about to become their reality. They were on the verge of being completely erased from the world, left behind while everyone they knew and loved just moved on. All right, so let's get into what actually happened. The whole thing kicked off as just another routine flight out of Miami, but it ended in a disappearance so total, so bizarre, it would have stumped investigators for years. Think about this. On board that Douglas DC-3 were 134 souls. That's 125 passengers and a crew of 9. Every single one of them had a story, a family, a whole life they were heading toward that they never, ever imagined would be cut off like this. Everything was going smoothly. The plane was cruising at about 8,300 feet over the North Atlantic. In the cockpit, Captain Robert Miller radioed in that everything was totally normal. It was, for all intents and purposes, just another night in the sky. And then, Captain Miller reported a small, minor technical issue. Just 10 seconds later, Flight NC 16002 simply vanished from radar, right over the Bermuda Triangle. After that, nothing, just complete and utter silence. So what happened? Well, the plane was ripped out of the sky by a mysterious vortex. As it was plummeting, all the instruments just went dead. And then, in a twist of fate that is just impossible to believe, a gigantic tree on an uncharted island literally caught the aircraft in its branches. It was a horrifying, violent crash, but the fact that anyone survived, that was the miracle. So their survival was a miracle, for sure, but it was also the beginning of a whole new kind of nightmare. They were alive, yeah, but they were stranded on an island that, as far as the rest of the world was concerned, just didn't exist. The reality of their situation hit them hard and fast. 10 people were badly injured. There was no fresh water in sight. They were surrounded by plants and animals they'd never seen before, with no idea what was dangerous. And to top it all off, they were completely cut off. Luckily, a retired Army doctor named Evelyn Reed was on the flight, and she immediately went to work, doing what she could for the wounded. But even in this grim situation, they didn't just give up. Captain Miller, showing incredible leadership, got the survivors organized. They started salvaging supplies from the wreck and building makeshift shelters. An engineer, Arthur Vance, worked day and night trying to fix the radio. And get this, a teenager figured out how to start a fire using the lens from his own glasses. A real spark of hope. But this island, it was unforgiving. Tragedy didn't wait long. A man died after eating a poisonous fruit, a terrible, grim lesson about their new world. And then, despair started to set in for some. A group of 5, convinced they could make it, secretly built a tiny raft and just pushed off into the vast ocean. They were never, ever seen again. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and then, unbelievably, months turned into years. That initial shock of just being alive wore off, replaced by the long, grinding reality of having to build a new society, a new life, right from scratch. That first year and a half was just a roller coaster of tragedy and hope. You had the first death, but then you had the birth of the first child on the island. But by year 2, a disastrous attempt to build a large escape raft ended with 16 people dead. And by the 5-year mark, the community itself was starting to break apart. After 5 years, with resources getting scarce and hope fading fast, the survivors split in 2 camps. Captain Miller was adamant. He led a group that believed they had to keep trying to escape. But another faction emerged, arguing that the island was their destiny now. They thought trying to leave was just a suicide mission. And as if all of that wasn't strange enough, an exploration party stumbled upon something truly chilling. Deep in the island's jungle, the ruins of some ancient civilization. And in a cave nearby, a human skeleton lying right next to a rusted piece of an old airplane. It sent a shock through everyone. They weren't the first to crash here. The mystery of this island, and the Bermuda Triangle just got a whole lot deeper. After 8 long years of fighting for every single day, just when it seemed like all hope was well and truly gone, fate decided to step in the most violent and unexpected way possible. In their 8th year, a monster cyclone just ripped through the island. It destroyed everything they had built, their homes, their crops, the society they had bled for. And if that wasn't enough, weeks later, a massive earthquake shook the very ground beneath their feet. Everything was gone. Can you even imagine? After everything they had been through, the crash, the deaths, the failed escapes, to have it all wiped away in an instant, staring at the total wreckage of their lives, you have to believe they were all asking themselves the same question. Is this it? Is this finally the end? But here's where the story takes an unbelievable turn. That same earthquake, in all its destructive power, had shifted the plane's wreckage, and somehow it exposed the radio that had been dead for years. And at that exact same time, a rare, incredibly intense solar flare was hitting Earth's atmosphere. These two events, total destruction on the ground and a cosmic anomaly in the sky, lined up perfectly to create a miracle. Arthur Vance was picking through the wreckage when he just absent-mindedly flicked a switch on the radio. A light blinked on for the first time in 9 years. With his hands trembling, he grabbed the microphone and sent out a message from what felt like beyond the grave. That one desperate call just sliced through 9 years of silence. It set off a chain of events for a rescue mission that would absolutely captivate the entire planet. The ghosts of Flight NC-16002 were finally coming home. The air traffic controller in Miami, he thought it was a sick joke at first. But when Arthur gave him the plane's official registration number, a stunned silence just fell over the entire control room. A massive rescue operation was scrambled, and soon a U.S. Navy ship appeared on the horizon. For the 82 people who were left, 9 years of pain and fear and waiting just erupted in tears of pure joy. Their return sent shockwaves across the globe. Can you imagine? Families who had mourned them, who had held funerals for them nearly a decade ago, were suddenly reunited. A year later, in 1958, their jaw-dropping story of survival was immortalized in a best-selling book by James Baldwin called Lost in the Echo. When you really think about it, their story leaves you with this one profound question. After 9 years lost to the world, facing starvation, disaster, and total despair, they still held on. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, when you're facing absolute, complete darkness, just how powerful is one single, defiant ray of hope?